Everyone. Hey, it's Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, coming to you right here from the studios in the Rock Health and Wellness Center in Lubbock, Texas, and on the radio at 98.7 Walk by Faith and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. So, hope you guys have had a great day out there. I hope everything went your way. I hope you noticed that half of the things were awesome and half of them sucked. And that was balance. And that's what the universe provides us. And so no worries about that. And so, yeah, so it was just, it was a good day at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We got up this morning, got a workout in, had a good breakfast, came up here and worked on some spines, tried to get people as healthy as possible. Went to Littlefield. We have a satellite clinic in Littlefield, Texas, where we go on Tuesday afternoons. And so went to Littlefield. We've been doing that since October of 2002. Took over that office. So whatever that is, 21 years, 21 years now. This October was how long we've been in Littlefield as well. So it was a lot of fun. So we got great people there that we take care of. I'm excited when I get to go see those guys every Tuesday afternoon. So just good people that have nervous systems, that get them checked and try to live as a healthy life as possible. So we had a good day. We had a good show last night. Got some feedback from it that we did a good job. It was a good show. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. We talked about Matthew, whatever. What were we talking about? Matthew 4, I believe, is what we were breaking down last night, and we were going over as Jesus was tempted, and the whole lesson was about temptation. And we'll touch on some of those little parts of it that we talked about last night. So if you didn't get to see last night's show, it might be worth it going back and checking that out. If you listen to us on the radio, you can go back to you could probably find us on the Walk by Faith Facebook page. I know Ken's been posting some of that stuff. And sometimes he'll put our show on there. So you can go to the Walk by Faith page on Facebook, or you can go to the Rock Health and Wellness Centers, or you can go to YouTube at Health from the Rock. And it's also on X. So you can find us in any of those places. Go back and watch the show. It's pretty good in temptation. And it was brought to you, or I already had it planned and everything. And then I asked one of my ladies last night, hey, what do you think? What is something that might be there's something that we could cover on the show that you might be interested in? And so she said, well, how about if you talked about the willpower? And so I thought that would be a great show to talk about willpower, and we've already got it scheduled because that's really the why. That's the why that you're working on, and it goes back to it every single time. Every time you get challenged, you got to go back to your fundamental belief system. Every time things don't look well for you, you got to go back to your fundamental belief system. And I learned that through athletics, but I've also learned it in business, and I've learned it in relationships, and I've learned it in finances, and I've learned it in all the areas of life, that when things get chaotic and they're crazy and you're getting stressed out and you're not real sure what to do, go back to the fundamentals. We actually had a show on fundamentals, so you can go back and find that too if you would like to. But that one thing that you believe in, your value system, that's what's going to carry you through. So that's what the show was about last night. We may hit on a little bit more of it here in a few minutes as we go through this show. But I just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions that you would like to ask while the show's going on, you're welcome to text us at 806-794-0400. Or you can send us a message on Facebook or YouTube or X, and we should be able to get that right here in the studio and answer any of your questions for you. So I know we talk about a lot of different subjects on this show, and sometimes it gets a little complicated. And if you were watching something, or you've gone back to see some of our previous shows, and you're not really sure exactly what is happening, or you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, and you want to reach out and say, hey, can you help me out? What did you mean by that? Or, whatever question you have. Or if you got your blood work done and you got something on your blood work that you don't understand what it means, and your doctor's not explaining it to you, I'm not going to be your doctor for you on your blood work, but I'll talk to you about the ideas of it, the ideas from a health and wellness standpoint. We think about things differently. I made that, I mentioned last night where my daughter was, one of her coworkers had mentioned the idea that she was holistic, and she just kind of laughed at that, and it's like, no, we're just normal for us, right? And that leads me to my article of the day. I was flipping through health news, just looking at some different things, and I saw this article. It was kind of interesting, and because it said it's on NBC News, and I mean, these are not scientific articles; they're just health, just current events, right? It's our effort to talk about current events, and I thought I'd talk about that, see if I could talk about that each night. But in the current events, it says how lawmakers in Texas and Florida undermine COVID vaccination efforts. Okay, let's be very clear. I'm not talking about whether or not you should get vaccinated or not. It's not within my scope of practice. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the concept of the article and what we get into. So I just saw that headline when it said Texas and Florida are undermining the COVID vaccination efforts. I thought, well, I wonder what that means. And so that I just read it. Well, the opening sentence of this article says Catherine Wells wants to urge Lubbock, Texas community to get vaccinations against COVID that could really save people from severe illness. Wells, the city's public health director, but she can't. A rule added to Texas budget that went into effect September 1st forbids health departments and other organizations funded by the state governments to advertise, recommended, or even list COVID vaccines alone. Clinics may inform patients that COVID-19 vaccines are available. The rule allows it is not being singled out if it is not being singled out from other vaccinations. And so it goes on, the article goes on to talk about the politics between the Democrats and the Republicans and what one set believes and what other set believes, and that Catherine comes on and says that it's going to be a dire season because we're not being able to get vaccinated and all that sort of thing. It's going to create a lot of sickness in people and people are going to suffer from it and all that sort of thing. It's just so funny to me. It's not funny, it's disgusting, but it's so interesting to me that is what we talk about when we talk about health. Like that's a health story right there. And that, like, if you've noticed that all the things that we talk about at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, right? And we named it the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And I consider myself a wellness chiropractor, and I study wellness and I read health and wellness books, right? In our world of wellness, not anyone else's world of wellness, but in our world of wellness, I don't ever think about vaccines. I don't ever think about Tylenol. It doesn't ever cross my mind to take a Tylenol. I don't think about, man, I wonder what anti-inflammatory I should take, or these allergies are killing me. And that's what we're going to talk about on the show a little bit. But these allergies are killing me. I should get something for it, right? When you finally flip over into wellness and you really start to figure out wellness, then that was one of the things that the coworker said to my daughter. He said, it seems like you guys try to get at the root cause of the problem. That's just so funny to me. That's so funny that is strange. Like my daughter is strange at work because her dad tries to get at the root cause of what might be messing up your health. Like, I don't know if y'all think that's funny. I mean, like if you think about it, you talk about it out loud. It's like, really, like that's some sort of like a weird philosophy. It's a weird philosophy to say if someone has allergies, why do you have allergies? And how come everybody doesn't have allergies? Right? We live in Lubbock, Texas, and there's cotton. I saw a whole cotton field when I was coming back from Littlefield this afternoon. And I saw a big old cotton field. It was kind of made me smile a little bit. Just wasn't anything on that plant but cotton balls. Then you just looked out across the field and it was white all the way across, right? And I know the cotton's a little stressed this year. I mean, it's not going to be as fabulous as ever, but this field must have been watered because it had some cotton on it. And every year it's like, well, this is allergy season, or man, well, it's got to be the cotton. It's got to be the harvesting. It's got to be the defoliant or whatever it is. I don't know all the words, but it's like, okay, if that's the case, then how come 300,000 people in Lubbock don't have allergy problems? If it's due to the environment, what is it about the environment that we can't handle, right? So what we want to do is we want to get to the cause of the problem. We want to get to the root cause of it when we're talking about it. And this one, this article, this is kind of a sensational article or whatever. And I'm not talking trash about Catherine Wells. She has a job that she's called the public health director in Lubbock, Texas, which is fine. You could call anybody anything you want to. God bless America. You can set up a group. You can set up a program. Get after it. Like, it's totally fine as long as you don't cross the line and make me follow your philosophy of health and wellness. As long as we both agree that, hey, this is America and you can do what you want to do. And if you choose what you want to do with your health, right? That's what it's like. Okay, if that's what we're going to get into, because what they study as health in the health department is vaccinations. You should get your vaccines. And I bet you, I have never heard them come out. I have never heard them come out and say we're going to have a citywide program to get rid of sugar. I've never heard them say that. I've heard them say that you better get your vaccine. You're going to have a tough time this winter. But I've never heard them say, boy, you better get your vitamin D levels up and get off of sugar, or you're going to have a tough time this winter, whatever it is, right? So I just thought it was an interesting thing. I just thought I'd bring it up. Number one, the government got involved. The legislature got involved and said, hey, y'all calm down on those efforts. And then if you want to talk about health, and you want to talk about health from a standpoint of trying to get to the root cause of stuff, maybe the person that's helping you looks at it a little bit different. That's all I'm saying on that article. Not trying to get negative, trying to be an encourager. Hope everybody's having a great day. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. All right, so I want to move on. We'll just get on through it and get past that idea. But last night we had the idea of temptation, and then that led me to several different ideas. So let's just hit the top things. What are the three main things that we're going to be tempted with, right? It's going to be lust of the flesh, right? We're going to be tempted with something that's of the flesh, and we're trying to reward our flesh. Another one of the articles that I saw was about the FDA urging drug companies to create a drug to help cocaine and methamphetamine addicts get off of their cocaine and methamphetamine, right? Well, okay, that's a whole nother world, but we know that the brain's not firing properly. We know that they're not moving their feet. That we know that they're not doing the things that they need to do. So what are they going to do? They're going to be tempted with lust of the flesh. That's going to be the first one. And then the second thing is that we're going to try to take the truth and we're going to try to twist it to our benefit. We're going to try to take the truth, and then we're going to be like, well, this is what it really means. And then this is what if you don't have a problem with sugar? Or what if you don't have a problem with insulin? I had that conversation this afternoon. What if I don't have a problem with insulin? So then now I'm just going to take this idea of truth and I'm going to twist it around so that I can argue for my idea of what I want to do with it right there. And then the last one is the lust of the eyes. We're going to see it, and now we're going to react to it, right? We're wanting to see it. So how do we overcome those three areas of temptation? Number one, we acknowledge the scheme. And my my mom and dad watched the show, and my mom said to me, she laughed last night when we talked about Tony the Tiger. And I was like, that scheme that is made up by men, right, to sell us things that we don't need, like cornflakes covered in sugar. right? That's not good for us. It's not healthy. It's bad for the body. It's bad for the whole idea. It's going to raise your insulin level. It's going to increase your omega-6 fatty acids. It's going to cause all kinds of issues with your attention span and your brain and your sugar and all that stuff, right? So it's not something that we ought to be having for breakfast, but we have it because we've been advertised to have it, and that's a scheme. Same thing with the little Keebler elf. Same thing with the little M&Ms, man. You could just go down the list of all those schemes that try to trick us into stuff, right? So we got to acknowledge the scheme, and then we immediately in the teaching that we had at church was immediately quote scripture, and that's where I said immediately go back to your why. That's what we want to do there. Immediately go back to your why. And then the third one is rely on your innate intelligence, which rely on your Holy Spirit, which is your innate intelligence inside your body. So rely on that, knowing that you have, hey, look, I know this is not good for me. I know I can make it through this day. I know that I can make things better. I know that if I keep moving forward, I got a chance. That's one of the things I said to one of my ladies this morning was, hey, and I got this from Grant Cardone, the windshield is way bigger than the rearview mirror, right? Or are we going forward or are we going backward? And so if we're looking back, all we got to look back in is that little rear view mirror. Now we got cameras, but we got that little rear view mirror or our side mirror, but it's not near as big as that windshield that's right in front of us. So we're gonna move forward. We're gonna pick up our cross and we're gonna move forward. And those are the things that we're gonna do to keep us being healthy and staying healthy. So that's just one of the ideas. So that was last night's show, and it brought me into some thoughts, and I know you're going to kind of wonder, how did you tie these things together? And I want to talk about allergies, and I want to do that in the second half of the show, and some different thoughts on allergies. But the first thing is the idea of we were talking about siblings this morning, and we were talking about how different our siblings are from each other. Like one of the ladies was talking about her sister, and she said something that her sister had said that was kind of mean to her other sister. And this lady that was telling me this story is just a sweetheart. And so she was kind of offended that her sister would tell her other sister, there's 3 girls, that what she said. And we got to talking about how different we are. And I think the same thing with my kids. It's like I raised 2 children. They're great kids. I love them to death, but they're really different. They're not the same. And if you're listening to the show right now and you think about the idea of how different you are from your sibling, and it's like, yeah, everybody gets that. Or if you've raised kids, or if you've got any kids, if you've raised kids and you think, yep, that's true. They're just different human beings. They're not the same. Like, they have different personalities. They have different wants and desires. They have different habits. They have all kinds of things that are different. And when we were having that conversation about that idea about how different siblings are, what kind of hit me in the moment of having that conversation was, why do we always trip back to genetics? What is going on with the idea that my high blood pressure is genetics, and my cholesterol is genetics, and my heart disease is genetics, and it's like, wait a minute. Does that mean I'm going to have all these problems, and my brother's going to have all these problems, and my sister's going to have all these problems, and all the problems that my daughter has, I can expect my son to have? And then that would be pretty much genetic, right? If it was genetic, how can we argue? The point that came to me, and part of this show is working this stuff out for myself. Sometimes I hear it for the first time myself, right? So when I'm talking it out, it just kind of hit me. I just thought to myself, why do we argue about how different, or not argue? Why do we point out how different we are from one another that have the same genetics, but then but then flip on and then say, well, the reason that I have this is because of my genetics. Like, I'm different than my dad. I'm different than my mom. But my mom and dad are two individual human beings. My dad's different than his brothers. My mom's different than her sisters. Like, they're both different than their parents. So my grandparents, what my grandparents did and what my parents did and what I do and what my kids did, it's like we've got a bunch of individual human beings right there. But we get tripped up all the time on this idea that, well, it's the reason that I have high blood pressure is because my dad had high blood pressure and my grandpa had high blood pressure. Or the reason that I have diabetes is because my dad has diabetes and my grandpa had diabetes, or everybody in my family has diabetes. So therefore I just have diabetes. But I'm not anything like him in all the rest of the areas. Like like I'm a totally different human being than those human beings were, except in this one area, now it's genetics. And I just thought to myself how that didn't make any sense. I thought, well, I'm not sure I buy that idea. And I don't, and I never have, and maybe since I've been in wellness, I don't believe that idea. So then, if you're not buying into that idea that it's genetics, now you start to understand what your environment is. And when you start to understand what your environment is, now you start to see your temptations. And then when you start to see your temptations, you can pull back to last night's show and you can see kind of how those things start to tie together. Right? If you part of the sale for genetics is that now it's not your fault. You're off the hook. None of your choices are your fault, right? I'm not saying that there's not predispositions to genetics. I'm not saying there's not a tie in some form or fashion. But what I am saying is, if you all of a sudden decide that well, the only reason I have high blood pressure is because my mom and dad had high blood pressure. I had a conversation with a girl today she's on high blood pressure medication. She's trying to get off of it. Well, she came in and did our nutritional program, and she's lost 12 pounds. Her percent body fat's down in the 20s something. Target for women is 32, and she's down somewhere in the 20s. She's got a visceral fat level of 6. Like her percent, all of the numbers were down. Like she's almost got perfect body composition. And so it's like, I want to go back and see my doctor and what she did. And I said, well, how'd you do it? She said, well, I just followed your recommendations of what you did. And I've stopped eating sugar, and I started reaching for almonds and not cashew, almonds and pistachios or whatever. I've been getting nuts instead of chips. I've been cutting out the sugar, and she's lost I don't know, it's been 6 or 8 weeks or whatever since she started, and she's lost her 12 pounds, and she's going back because she wants to talk to her medical doctor about getting off of her blood pressure medication. And her medical doctor told her, well, you're on your blood pressure medication because you're a little bit obese and because it's of genetics. Well, it's going to be super interesting when she goes back, now that she's even got, lost the 12 pounds. She's even better in her body composition and she feels great. What is the deal that's going on now? If she can get off her blood pressure medication and her blood pressure can stay down, then it never was genetics in the first place. It was environment. Right. And that's what I call epigenetics. And that's what I learned a few years back, is the idea of epigenetics. So I just thought that little connection right there was something that I thought was as interesting, was the connection between how different I am from my siblings, except when it comes to the things that might make me sick. And therefore it's just all genetics. I don't, just a thought. You can walk with it if you want to. You can work it out in your own brain if you want to. But it was just a thought for me, and it's that was one idea right there that I thought about. Another idea that I thought about is, I had a conversation yesterday with a lady that really did not understand. She didn't understand the level of challenge that she has with her health. there's a lot of things going on with her health that are not healthy. They're really, really not healthy, and they're very challenging, but she doesn't realize it, and she hasn't realized it over a long period of time because she's felt fine. And it's like that's an interesting. We had a really interesting conversation about that, and I just want to present that idea that just because you're feeling fine doesn't mean you're functioning fine. And that's why we don't do pain management chiropractic. We do wellness chiropractic. That's the difference between the two. And there's things you could do that make a difference right there. So I think that it's something that you might consider, because what we have is we have lots of diagnostics these days. We have lots of testings. We have a heart rate variability. We have a heart sound recorder. We have X-rays. Your medical doctor is going to have MRIs and all kinds of blood work and scans and ultrasounds and all those things that we have that give us an opportunity to learn things about our physiology, even when we think we're fine because we feel good. So there's it's not just about how we feel, it's about how we function. And if you really want to be healthy, then that's what you want to do, is look at some of those things about how you function. We are coming up on a break on the radio, so we're going to take a few minutes for some messages, and then we will be right back. We'll see you guys right after the break. Yeah, so I thought it was interesting, but I've taken care of this lady for a little bit of time, and I haven't done a very good job of explaining to her the challenges that she's got with her health. And she had a little bit of a scare not too long ago, and she was really worried about it. And so I had the conversation with her. I was like, "Well, I'll look into that for you." And then she, um, we ran some tests on her, some more tests on her, and there was just some things that showed up that were kind of challenging. And that might be something that you might be interested in. Wherever you live, if you like to look at your health from a standpoint of, you know what, look, let's be wise with this thing. Let's see if there's something going on that we don't necessarily know is going on, and then just because we feel fine is it's just a different philosophy. It's just a different idea, right? What makes a person function right, and then how far do you have to go down that road before when you don't feel good any longer, and then you find that thing that's been underlying for a long period of time, right? So you might just pay attention to some of those things. You might let some of your wellness doctors take a look at you. Hey, doc, take a look at me. Tell me what you think, and understand that the doctor is going to do the best that they can to have all the information that they can give you. But maybe that's where you talk to your medical doctor. I've got a girl I was talking to this morning, and she just did a whole panel of blood work trying to figure out what's going on with her. And I asked her who ran the blood work. She said my medical doctor did, and I said, "Well, great." I thought that was great that her medical doctor ran the blood work, because she's got me helping her. She's got her medical doctor helping her. Maybe we could get together with both of the things together. We might figure out what's going on with her, and help her move on down the road in a healthy manner. Right? We can work together. It's that we don't have to work separately from each other. We can work together, and then you can decide what thing that you feel like is the best thing for you. That's what I think is probably the optimal way to handle our health, right? Is to get that information from the people, gather the information from different people that you can get it from, and then make the decision on which direction that you want to go. And so all the things that I'm talking about is health. I look through the world at health. I'm trying to find the root cause. I'm not going to default ever to a drug. That's not going to be in my system. It doesn't mean that the medical doctor might not default to a drug, which they probably will. But now at least you have somebody who's looking at it from two different directions right there. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on Tuesday, November 7th. And we're coming to you from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios right here in Lubbock, Texas. And we're also on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio. So we were talking about the idea of um, whether or not it's genetics or environment. And I'm going to present for your consideration. It might be a lot of your environment, right? But the other part I wanted to touch on. I was reading our book, Extreme Health, by Dr. Guest. He's my nutrition teacher in chiropractic school, and I was going through this book and looking at a couple of things. And there's a chapter in here, and it's called "Nothing to Sneeze At." And I want to just share this thought with you. I want to share this chapter with you because this might present some ideas that you haven't heard before, and and so I thought you might like it. This is not book review night. This is actually something that we're trying to talk about, and what we're talking about right now is allergies. And so I want to talk about an idea of allergies, and he's telling the story in the chapter about how one day when he was driving to work, he noticed a little pain in his abdomen, and by the time he arrived at his office, the pain had increased considerably. He decided to lay down for a few minutes until the pain went away, and it didn't. As the pain became more intense and radiating into his back, he began to sweat. After an hour or so, the pain slowly disappeared as mysteriously as it began. So he had this moment. He didn't know what was going on. So over the next couple of years, the pain visited often. Sometimes it was only a week or two between episodes. Other times it would be 2 or 3 months. So he'd have something that would hit him, and then it would go away, and it would hit him, and it would go away. He could not make the connection. One day, the pain wouldn't go away, and he decided to go to the emergency room. And blood work indicated the possibility of a gallbladder inflammation. A sonogram was performed, and the gallbladder looked fine, but the bile duct leading from the gallbladder to the small intestine was swollen. A surgeon recommended removing the gallbladder the following morning. And he said that it didn't make sense to him because the gallbladder looked okay. The surgeon assured him that if we jerk that thing out of there in the morning, you'll never have this pain again. And that's what we just talked about with our article, right? This is Dr. Guest. He's talking about himself, and he's our nutrition teacher at Parker College. He's passed away now. He was on up there a little ways, but this is the story that he had, and it's like, okay, that's the way one surgeon sees it. Hey, dude, you don't need your gallbladder anyway. Just take that thing out, right? Well, not exactly. I mean, maybe God is intended for you to have a gallbladder, and maybe there's a function for a gallbladder, and maybe we should look at it, right? So he just thought, no, that's really not the way that he wanted to handle it. And so the pain kind of subsided, and then he went home. Well, and then he says in his book right here, he says, whoa, doc, this is supposed to be a chapter on allergies, not gallbladder disease. Maybe you have a brain allergy, which is kind of funny. And he said, no, I understand, but just hang on just a second. Because he said, this is where the story gets really interesting. A couple of days later, he was introduced to a book by Dr. James Brenneman, a medical doctor specializing in allergies. And he said the gallbladder symptoms were usually caused by food allergies. And he was like, what? He was pretty skeptical. Dr. Guest used to be, when he was a young man, he was a detective in the Las Cruces, New Mexico Police Department. That's what I really love about Dr. Guest. He's just a facts ma'am kind of guy. He went to chiropractic school after as a second career, and then he became a diplomate in nutrition. He's the one that told me all kinds of stuff about nutrition that blew my mind. But he got this book, and he was a little skeptical of this idea that his gallbladder might be a food allergy, right? So he figured this allergist, he said, so I figured to this allergist, everything looks like an allergy. Besides, I wasn't sneezing, I was hurting. But Dr. Brenneman had evidence. That's what he likes. I like that evidence. He said the symptoms disappeared in all of the gallbladder patients when the offending food was identified and eliminated from the diet. This is Dr. Brenneman, Brenneman. He said the symptoms, because he was an allergist. He's a medical doctor that specializes in allergies. And what he said was The symptoms disappeared in all the gallbladder patients when the offending food was identified and eliminated from the diet, even when the organ was full of stones. And that's what we learned in chiropractic school. It's not the stones that are the problem. You can have all kinds of stones in your gallbladder, but if your gallbladder is inflamed and that the duct from the gallbladder into your small intestine gets blocked because of the inflammation can cause the pain, and that can cause a problem. Now, if you get a stone stuck in that duct, that can be a problem too. But you can live out your entire life with a gallbladder full of stones and not have a problem, because I've seen it on X-ray. The patients died. They took X-ray of them in the cadaver lab, and they had a whole gallbladder full of stones, and the person died from a disease that had nothing to do with their gallbladder. So I've seen that before. So he said that when he eliminated the offending food, then the problem went away, even when the organ was full of stones. When the food was reintroduced, the pain would return. He said the allergic reaction causes the bile duct to swell, which restricts the flow of a stone where blocking the duct. So when a patient tells the doctor about the pain and diagnostic imaging and diagnostic imaging finds a bag full of stones, the doctor assumes the stones are the cause of the pain. If there's been a stone in my gallbladder, I might have had surgery. It seems logical, but according to Dr. Brenneman's work, it may be quite wrong. And that's the same thing I argue about with arthritis. You go to the doctor because you have pain, and then you tell the doctor where you have pain, and the doctor takes an X-ray of your spine, either your neck or your low back, and then the doctor tells you he sees on the X-ray the degeneration in the spine, and then he tells you that the reason that your neck hurts is because of the degeneration. And that's not true. That is not true. The reason that your neck hurts is because of the inflammation. That's what's causing the problem. That's what you got to watch out for right there, right? So you get into those different ideas, and that's exactly what Dr. Guest was saying. He was like, look, if you have a gallbladder attack and you go to the doctor and they do an ultrasound or an X-ray and they see that you have stones in your gallbladder, they're going to marry those two things together and immediately tell you that the reason that you're having the gallbladder attack is because of the stones. And what Dr. Brenneman, a medical doctor, not a chiropractor, like I'm not outside my scope, right? Dr. Brenneman, a medical doctor specializing in allergies, says that's not the fact. The fact is that you might have the duct inflamed, and it's being inflamed because of an allergy. Dr. Brenneman listed the foods that most often cause problems for his patients. For some people, onions were the problem. Whoa, how about that? Others reacted to chocolate. The doctor developed a list of a number of foods that cause problems and put them in order of the frequency of involvement. The food that triggered attacks in more people than others was eggs. That's interesting, right? And one of the things that Dr. Guest taught me was, if you are eating something over and over and over and over and over again, you might develop an allergy to that particular thing. And so the onions, chocolate, eggs, right? There could be some things in our environment that's causing us to be inflamed, that's causing an allergic reaction. So he said, I didn't eat eggs very often, but I did remember that my wife had prepared some eggs 2 or 3 days before I went to the emergency room. I eliminated eggs from my diet and never had another pain until I was at a nutrition conference in Florida a couple of years later. I was enjoying a luxurious buffet and noticed some key lime pie on the dessert table. I had never tasted a key lime pie, so I had a slice. It was delicious, and since I was likely to eat it again in Texas, I had another slice. This was on a Saturday. On the following Tuesday, the pain hit again. You might think it was psychological connection, but I didn't know key lime pie had eggs in it. Unwittingly, I had performed a classic challenge test, the reintroduction of this suspected allergen. So that's what we call the elimination diet, right? We eliminate the things that are high on that list, and you can probably Google that. I haven't even looked at that, but Dr. Brenneman, allergist book, things that are likely to cause allergies. And so if what you do is you just eliminate those periods for like a 3-week period of time, and then one at a time add them back. So add back your onions one at a time. See if you have wait 2 or 3 days, see if you have a reaction. Add back your eggs, wait 2 or 3 days, see if you have a reaction. That's called an elimination diet. And then you're going to reintroduce it. And then if you do have a reaction to it, one of the things that you can do is you can eliminate that so they for like 90 days, like 3 months. Like, don't introduce that food back into your diet. And then reintroduce it again and see if you have that same reaction. Because sometimes you will just get this reaction, and that reaction will stay in, will be eliminated from your body. So it's your immune system, right? So that was a long story, but it brought out two very important points. The symptoms did not occur until 2 or 3 days after the exposure. Think about that, 2 or 3 days after the exposure. And I had abdominal pain instead of the typical allergy symptoms. So let's talk about both of them. So most of us are familiar with the unusual allergies. The dogwood trees spits out pollen, and within a very short time, we begin to sneeze, wheeze, itch, etc. We also know of people who are allergic to strawberries or peanuts or some sort of food, right? Almost immediately after eating it, they have the above symptoms or worse. These immediate reactions of food are usually pretty easy to identify. The problem is with delayed allergies. And I think that is what a lot of us deal with, especially out here. I say West Texas because I know I'm familiar with the allergies that the people have in West Texas. But they're also, I'm sure that happens everywhere. Everywhere's got something. I went to Santa Fe one time, and there was some sort of pinon tree or something that was going in Santa Fe that caused a bunch of allergies. Or if you drive out of West Texas and go to Dallas or Houston for a day or two, or San Antonio, and you drive back into West Texas, a lot of times you'll start to feel that allergy again, right? But it might also be a combination of our environment, of the things that are in our environment, and the foods that we are eating that are keeping that going. Delayed allergy involves a component of the immune system called an immunoglobulin G, an IgG. The IgG binds with the offending substance to form what is called an immune complex. The immune complexes circulate through the bloodstream and then are deposited in some organ or tissue of the body. In some people, the target tissue might be the bile duct. In others, it could be the joints, arthritis, brain, lack of concentration, irritability, muscles, muscle pain, fatigue, or just about anything else. So you can see that allergies can appear in many disguises. In many cases, the patient and the doctor never even consider that the symptoms may be allergy related. So that's kind of an interesting thought that Dr. Guess is presenting right there. What determines the location where the circulating immune complexes will be deposited? The mechanism is far too complicated for us to understand. I'd like to talk about on this show. Dr. Guess was very simple in his book, but it probably has something to do with genetic predisposition. I thought that was hilarious. It's because I was already going to talk about genetics today, and he said maybe your genetic predisposition might say that you're going to put your allergy in some place, or like your allergic reaction is going to show up as arthritis versus someone else is going to show up as a gallbladder versus someone else is going to show up as brain fog, right? So, but it probably has something to do. Let's see. We might inherit a genetic tendency for a particular malady, but those genes do not have to express themselves. That's the point I was trying to make. Those genes do not have to express themselves. If I don't put myself in the environment that causes my genes to express themselves. That's why I also think that you can heal yourself from a lot of problems that are genetically expressing by changing your environment. You get back to those things that are in your environment, like you say you have an autoimmune disease, or you like whatever that thing tries to do, which I don't think. What I've learned in autoimmune diseases is that your body mistakenly attacks itself. I don't think that happens. I think the body purposely attacks itself based on the environment that the person's in. If you could get that person into a different cellular environment, then that body would change the way it's functioning. So we may inherit a genetic tendency for a particular malady, but those genes do not have to express themselves. Modifying genetic expression is a very hot topic right now. among enlightened, intelligent, talented, handsome nutritionists such as myself. Dr. Guest was funny. He was a funny dude. He was he was a very interesting. He was a dry sense of humor kind of guy, but he did have a good he did have a good sense of humor. So, all right, Dr. Wonderful, don't get carried away. So, if the allergy might show up as anything, and it might be days after the exposure, how can I know if an allergy is involved and what I'm allergic to? And so, there's two basic ways, and that's what he talked about in the elimination diet, right? You eliminate the most likely allergen foods from your diet for 3 weeks to see if it makes you feel better. Then you add the suspected food back into your diet, one new food every third day, to see which one causes the reaction. This method has an advantage of being inexpensive, and it can identify foods that you are sensitive to but not truly allergic. For example, if drinking milk causes bloating and diarrhea, it's probably due to the lack of enzyme lactase, not an allergy. The disadvantage is being difficult to complete because it's restrictive. So now you're going to want it's going to be like, well, what am I supposed to eat? If it's too restrictive, what am I supposed to do with that? So this method may also miss some foods that are not allergic to most people, but are to you. So that's the elimination diet. If you think you've got something, you might could try it. Like if you're having a bunch of if you're having a bunch of problems with allergies, you might consider it's an internal problem, not an external problem. You might come to the inside out. You might think of it, okay, is it because of all of this dust that's blowing in the air? See, that's where that would make the argument that if it's due to the dust that's blowing in the air, everyone under the air should have an allergic reaction to it. Every person that's underneath the air should be dealing with an allergy, but that's not the case. And that goes back to all the way back, right? That's what my brother-in-law told me when I first went to work for him. He's like, how come during flu season, when we were in third grade, right? And there was 25 kids in our class and 15 kids got the flu and 10 kids didn't get the flu. How come 10 of those kids didn't get the flu? And I said, well, they weren't exposed to the flu virus. And he was like, do you remember third grade? And I was like, yeah, I remember third grade. And everybody's exposed to everything, right? We're all sneezing and coughing all over each other. We're touching all over the tables. We're all in the same place. We're sharing pencils. We're like, right? How come those 10 kids didn't get the flu and 15 kids got the flu? Could it have possibly been the internal system of those 10 kids could handle the flu virus when it got exposed to the flu virus? That's what irritates me about the dadgum COVID stuff, right? Why do we have loved ones that died from COVID? And we all are touched by it. I don't have a loved one that died from COVID, but I've got patients that I took care of for 18 years that died in 5 days. So don't give me that. Don't come at me that way. So what is the mechanism that causes one person to be able to handle a virus and another person to have severe problems with the virus, right? Is it my lack of vaccine in my body that caused that? I'm going to argue no. I'm going to argue that it has nothing to do with that approach. I'm going to argue that it must be some sort of internal system that's going on that's causing that person. So it's an inflammatory problem. It's an inflammatory problem. So let's make sure we're clear on that, right? Before we go any further. Inflammation is the beginning stage of the immune response. I'm going to pause for dramatic effect right there. Inflammation is the beginning stage of the immune response. Okay? So your immune system is activated, and that's what's causing the inflammation. Why does your immune system get activated? It gets activated because it feels like something's attacking your body. You've got something inside your system that your body is detecting as a threat, which is kicking in your immune system to try to protect you from your environment, right? The internal environment. So could it be possible that it's the onions or the eggs that's causing your allergies, not the dust in the air. If you could eliminate one thing that we really try to do in my office, and what we really try to at least think about, is what are the things I can do versus what are the things that I don't have any control over, right? There are some things that I have no, like at this particular moment, one of the other articles, no, I'm not even going to get into that. But at this particular moment, there are lots of things that I do not have control over. And that pretty much is consistent in every single moment of my life. There are a lot of things I do not have control over. I cannot control the wind. I don't have the faith of a mustard seed to just stand there and stop the wind. I've been trying to figure out that mustard seed thing for 30 years. Like, man, how in the heck do you get the faith of a mustard seed? But if anybody has wisdom on that, please let me know, because I'd love to know how that works. But to be able to just stop the wind. But in West Texas, you can't stop the wind. And when there's nothing to cover the ground but dirt and the wind blows, it's going to get all over everybody, right? So if I can't control the wind, can I control the eggs? Can I control the onions? Can I control the sugar? And if I'm trying to control an inflammatory response, if I'm trying to control an immune response that causes inflammation, what can I do to get that inflammation down? Right? That's where we talk about anti-inflammatory things. That's why every single show just wraps itself back around on itself again. It's the and it's the same. You see how it just keeps going? It just keeps coming back around to wellness. When you're talking about wellness, we're talking about Dr. Guest. We're talking about his gallbladder attack. He narrowed it down that it was eggs. When he ate eggs, he got a gallbladder attack for some reason. Now, here's the other thing that I would say. If I was in class, I'd say, but Dr. Guest, you didn't have this happen till later on in life. How come why did you never ate eggs when you were 12? You never ate eggs when you were 15? You never ate eggs when you were 23? Then all of a sudden you get to be something 30, 40, whatever. And then now you're having a gallbladder attack. What is the problem right there? That's another whole question we got to answer. If we're going to get to the root of the problem, right? If we're going to get down to the root of the problem, we got to figure out what is the mechanism that's causing that immune response. And that immune response is inflammatory. And it's inflammation. So our body is creating inflammation. And that's what arthritis is. That's what arthritis is. Arthritis is inflammation of the joint. Just like the gallbladder attack is inflammation of the duct. And it could be something that is in the environment that we're eating, that we're bringing into our internal environment, not our external environment. I'm hoping that's making sense right there. I hope that does make sense, because we all, like, a lot of people deal with gallbladder. Leslie went through a whole gallbladder attack a few years. I don't know. It's been more than a few years. 10 years ago, she was having these massive pains. Like, when you're in school, they teach you about the gallbladder. They teach you 40, fat, and flatulent. Whatever. That's what they teach you. Think about gallbladder. A person get a female. That's the fourth one. Female, 40, fat, and flatulent. But it doesn't have to necessarily be female. But that's the 4 Fs that I learned in chiropractic school. If any of my chiropractic friends are watching this show and I'm wrong, please let me know. But I'm pretty sure I remember that, right? Okay, so if a person's having gas, if a person has gained some weight, if a person has hit 40, and if you think about that female right there, okay, all of a sudden they start to have some gallbladder problems, right? So Leslie was having some. I'm not saying Leslie was fat. Don't you dare say that I said that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when she got to be a certain age, I think it was actually, it might have been around 40, sometime like that. I'm not saying that she was fat. Don't get me wrong. And she's beautiful. I've loved her for 36 years. So, but she had a gallbladder problem and it was painful. And so what did we do? We worked on the root cause of her gallbladder. Do I treat gallbladder attacks? No, but I do treat subluxation. And if you want to know if you're subluxated, that's called a viscerosomatic response. You'll get a knot in your spine, the muscles around your spine whenever your gallbladder attacks, or you'll get pain up into your right shoulder. We can call that a subluxation. That's fair enough, right? So what we did is we addressed we went through a gallbladder cleanse. We got her gallbladder to calm itself back down, and then we figured out some of the things that might be flaring that thing up. And she hasn't had a single other problem with her gallbladder since. This must be over 10 years ago that we did that. But if we had been in a medical doctor's life, or if we had been anybody that didn't understand it, we would have taken her to the hospital. They would have said your gallbladder's inflamed. In the next 24 hours, her gallbladder would have been gone. Well, she didn't get her gallbladder gone. She got to keep it. So, hey, that's the end of the show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Tomorrow night is book review night. I'm going to try to go over the 5 love languages. It ought to be an awesome night tomorrow night. So, if I can find the book, we'll go over the 5 love languages. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.